So today is February 28th, which is Rare Disease Day. And we wanted to start this deep dive by really grounding our conversation in what that means. Because, living with a rare disease often means dealing with an invisible struggle.
Yeah, exactly. It's a day that highlights not just the medical conditions themselves, but the profound isolation that can come with them. Because when a condition is rare, the everyday impacts are often completely misunderstood by the general public.
Right. And to really understand that, I want you to imagine waking up, opening your eyes, and realizing your physical body suddenly feels like it weighs twice as much as it did the night before.
It's an incredibly daunting way to start a day.
I mean, you go to make your morning coffee and just holding the spoon, just, guiding it to the cup requires this intense conscious concentration. Your hand shakes, your arm feels like lead.
Right, and just stirring the coffee takes the kind of mental energy most people reserve for solving a really complex math problem.
Exactly. And that breakdown is our focus today. We are exploring the really intense, often overlooked relationship between sleep and ataxia. And we're going way past the generic advice of, well, sleep is good for you.
Oh, absolutely, because for someone without a neurological condition, a terrible night of sleep usually just means, you're a bit groggy.
Yeah, you grab an extra coffee and yawn through a meeting.
Right, you move on.
Eh.
But for a brain-managing ataxia, sleep is a central neurological regulator. And the insights we're working with today come directly from Paco Oliva, who founded Ataxia Comunidad.
Which is such a vital resource.
It really is. He's curated clinical data right alongside the lived realities of people managing this condition. It's an incredible blend of science and real-world experience.
And if this discussion today helps you understand your own symptoms, or if it makes you think of someone you know, please share this with them, because putting a name to this specific struggle can be really life-changing.
That's a great point. So before we look at what happens when sleep is lost, we need to establish what ataxia is and what sleep actually does for a brain managing it.
Right, the baseline. So ataxia involves a dysfunction in the cerebellum where it's connecting pathways, right?
Right.
The part of the brain responsible for motor control and balance.
Yes. Think of it as the brain's autopilot. For a neurotypical person, walking across a room or just maintaining your posture in a chair is totally automatic. You don't think about which core muscles to contract to keep your spine upright.
You just sit there.
Exactly. But with ataxia, that autopilot system is compromised. The sensory integration is fragmented, so movements require immense conscious effort.
I really like the analogy of driving for this. Like a neurotypical brain is operating an automatic car. You press the gas, you steer, the car handles the gears.
You can listen to the radio, chat with a passenger, without thinking about the engine.
But a brain managing ataxia, it's driving a highly temperamental manual transmission. The clutch is slipping, the gears have no labels, and you have to manually calculate the fuel injection for every single mile.
That is exactly it. You are hyper-focused on the mechanics just to keep the car from stalling.
Mm-hmm.
Now think about what sleep does in that scenario. Neurologically, sleep is this incredibly active biological process.
It's not just powering down.
Not at all. It's when the brain repairs synaptic connections, clears out cellular waste, and replenishes essential neurotransmitters. Crucially, it takes all the complex motor learning from the day and consolidates it.
So it's basically servicing that temperamental manual transmission so it can even start the next morning.
Right. And if you're already burning through neurological energy at this astonishing rate just to sit upright, that nighttime maintenance isn't a luxury.
It's survival.
Exactly. Missing a night of sleep doesn't just add fatigue. It acts as a massive negative multiplier for the ataxia itself.
Which is huge. And, if you're listening and realizing that someone in your life might be dealing with this compounding exhaustion, definitely pass this along to them. They might not realize how critical that sleep baseline is.
They really might not. Because the physical glitches, they start showing up almost immediately without that restorative window. The first casualty is fine motor control.
And processing speed drops severely too, right?
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
Gait becomes visibly more unsteady. But the really insidious breakdown, the one that's hard to see, happens in the postural microadjustments.
Right. Those are the tiny, invisible muscle corrections we make 1,000 times a minute. Like if I lean slightly left right now, my core muscles instantly tighten on the right so I don't fall over.
And we take that entirely for granted. But in a sleep-deprived ataxic brain, the latency of those microadjustments skyrockets. The body takes a fraction of a second longer to realize gravity is pulling it off-center.
And then another fraction of a second to send the signal to the muscle.
Yes. And by the time the muscle fires, you've already lost your balance.
Which is terrifying. And the sources from Ataxia Comunidad highlight how this bleeds into literally everything. Eye-hand coordination just plummets.
The ocular muscles struggle to track smoothly, so reading gets hard, writing gets clumsy.
And handling small things, like that coffee spoon we mentioned, takes double the effort. There's this one quote from Paco Oliva's curation from a community member. They said, "It's like pushing a body that weighs twice as much."
It's such a visceral, accurate image. And there is a deep neurochemical reason for that exact sensation of heaviness. To understand why the body feels like lead, we have to look at the balance between two critical neurotransmitters, GABA and glutamate.
Okay, let's break those down, because glutamate is essentially the brain's gas pedal, right? It excites the neurons and tells muscles to contract.
Yes, and GABA is the brake pedal. It inhibits neurons and tells muscles to relax. You need a flawless symphony of both to execute any movement.
Like bending your arm.
Exactly. Glutamate tells your bicep to contract, but simultaneously, GABA has to tell your tricep to relax. If both muscles fire at once, they fight each other.
And in ataxia, that delicate calibration is already compromised.
Heavily compromised. And sleep is the primary mechanism the brain uses to recalibrate those chemicals. So when you miss out on deep sleep, your GABA levels are depleted.
You literally lose the brakes.
You lose the brakes, the nervous system starts misfiring, leading to terrible muscle tone regulation. You get spasticity, where muscles tense up when they should be relaxing.
So the antagonist muscles are literally fighting against the movement you want to make.
Right. That is why it feels like pushing a body that weighs twice as much. You are physically fighting your own nervous system.
Wow. That makes that quote make complete mechanical sense. It's not just a perception of being tired. It's a literal biomechanical resistance.
And there are limits to our clinical understanding of exactly how this varies from person to person, but we know the motor system ends up dragging yesterday's physical errors into today because sleep is the primary window for neuroplasticity.
The brain's rewiring process.
Yes. When you're sleep deprived, that halts. You're trying to run today's complex motor calculations on yesterday's corrupted, exhausted hardware.
That is such a powerful way to put it. And again, if this specific explanation is helping things click for you, share this with your network. Sometimes understanding the chemistry behind the heavy feeling is a huge relief.
It really validates the experience. And it brings us to the cognitive and emotional toll. Because it's not just the muscles that get heavy.
Right. When neuroplasticity is compromised and processing speed drops, the mental load becomes crushing.
The impact on attention and executive function is just staggering. Because motor tasks aren't automatic, they require active, sustained attention from the prefrontal cortex.
But sleep deprivation degrades your ability to maintain focus.
Exactly. Keeping your attention on the mechanics of walking across a room becomes this monumental cognitive task.
Which means working memory takes a massive hit. You get profound indecision and inability to multitask. Like, you can't carry coffee, watch for a rug on the floor, and listen to a conversation at the same time.
The processing power just isn't there.
But I want to pause and play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah.
Because, someone might listen and think, well, everyone gets cranky and foggy when they're tired. I know I'm useless with less than 6 hours of sleep.
Sure.
So how is this emotional shift uniquely different or more severe for someone with ataxia?
It's a really fair question. But it comes back to that baseline. Yes, a neurotypical person gets a dip in mood.
Yeah.
But they're still driving an automatic car. They can still walk to the kitchen without thinking.
Right.
For someone with ataxia, the emotional toll is exponentially amplified because the physical struggle is constant, and frankly, it's dangerous.
Oh, because of the fall risk.
Exactly. If every step requires conscious calculation and your processing speed is suddenly slashed in half, the frustration isn't just an annoyance. It is a fundamental barrier to existing safely in your environment.
I see. It's the cognitive fog colliding with a failing physical body. The prefrontal cortex is so drained keeping the body upright, it has zero energy left for emotional regulation.
Which creates extreme emotional lability. We see sudden mood swings, a massive drop in frustration tolerance, and heightened anxiety.
The Ataxia Comunidad sources use the phrase tolerant in the morning, irritable at night.
That captures it perfectly. As the day wears on, the neurological reserves are completely drained. The emotional regulation simply collapses under the weight of the physical effort.
Man, that is intense. And if that dynamic sounds familiar, like maybe someone in your family struggles with those exact mood shifts in the evening, sharing this might help explain that it's neurological depletion, not just a bad mood.
It's vital context for families to have, because this sets the stage for a really brutal domino effect.
Right, the vicious cycle. We've established how lack of sleep makes ataxia worse. But the cruel irony is that ataxia makes sleep incredibly difficult to achieve.
It is a self-perpetuating cycle. It starts with one night of poor sleep. The next morning, balance and coordination are worse due to that GABA glutamate imbalance.
And when you physically feel unstable, your primal survival mechanisms kick in. The fear of falling increases dramatically.
And that psychological fear triggers a physiological response. The brain floods the system with cortisol and adrenaline. It creates intense physical tension.
Your muscles literally lock up to protect you from falling.
Yes. You spend the whole day in hypervigilance, mentally and physically.
So by the time you get back into bed, you're wearing this rigid armor of muscle tension. The anxiety and tension make it incredibly hard to fall asleep.
And the cycle starts over. But the deficit is deeper. Plus, there are physical barriers in the bed itself. We take the mechanics of sleeping for granted. You roll over without waking up.
But for someone whose proprioception, their awareness of where their limbs are, is compromised, rolling over isn't a reflex anymore.
No, it requires waking up fully, planning the movement, and exerting conscious effort just to shift from your back to your side, especially in the dark when you lack visual feedback to tell your brain where your body is.
Wow. And you add involuntary nocturnal movements and the deep muscle ache from fighting for balance all day. The result is chronically fragmented sleep.
You might be in bed for 8 hours, but the sleep architecture is destroyed. It's totally non-restorative.
It's a relentless loop. And if you know someone trapped in this cycle, please send this their way, because the big question is, how do you break it?
Right, because theoretical clinical advice usually stops at practice good sleep hygiene.
Which falls completely flat here. We need realistic, road-tested strategies from the people actually living in the trenches with this.
And this is where the practical toolkit crowdsourced by Ataxia Comunidad becomes absolutely invaluable. These aren't magic cures. They are daily management tools to intercept specific parts of that cycle.
So one of the core strategies they emphasize is strict sleep routines to train the circadian rhythm, and avoiding screens before bed, which sounds standard, but there's a unique mechanical reason here, isn't there?
There really is. Visual tracking is a major conscious motor task for someone with ataxia. Staring at a bright, rapidly changing screen physically exhausts the visual and sensory integration systems.
So you're taxing the exact neural pathways you need to power down?
Exactly. The community strongly advocates for creating a genuinely dark, quiet environment to aggressively reduce the sensory processing load.
They also highlight progressive relaxation and breathing techniques, which makes sense given that cortisol spike from the fear of falling.
You have to manually override the survival instinct keeping your muscles locked up. You have to send a chemical signal that the environment is safe.
Another highly specific strategy that stood out was about pain management. The advice isn't just to manage pain, but to manage it before lying down. Why is the timing so critical?
Because pain equals adrenaline. If you wait until you're in bed, tossing and turning with muscle soreness, your brain has already released adrenaline.
Which actively blocks sleep architecture.
Yes, you had to preemptively intercept it. Treating muscle tension before you get under the covers stops the adrenaline spike before it even starts.
That is so smart. The final strategy is the rule of getting out of bed if sleep simply won't come.
Right. If you lie there frustrated, fighting your own rigid muscles, you reinforce the psychological association that the bed is a place of anxiety. You have to break the association and reset.
Sharing these highly specific interventions really highlights an important dynamic. Clinical data is essential, but it can be really cold.
It can. Shared lived experience provides a unique kind of validation. When a doctor reads a chart and says fatigue is a common symptom, it's just a data point.
But when a peer in Ataxia Comunidad says, I feel like I'm pushing a body that weighs twice as much, and here is how I manage the pain before bed, that is profound.
It fundamentally reduces the isolation of a rare condition. It tells the individual your reality is accurate, it is shared, and you are not crazy for feeling this exhausted.
Absolutely. So let's bring all these threads together. The central takeaway from Paco Oliva's curation today is that in ataxia, a lack of sleep is never just a side effect.
No, it's a potent negative multiplier. It aggravates instability by delaying muscle responses, it scrambles the GABA glutamate balance, spikes cognitive fatigue, and drastically increases the risk of dangerous falls.
It actively undermines the brain's ability to cope with the immense metabolic demands of the condition. Without sleep, you just can't run the manual transmission.
You really can't.
Yeah,
And I just want to say to everyone listening and to the entire community out there on this rare disease day, your voices matter so much.
they really do.
Being part of a community like Ataxia Comunidad, commenting, sharing your own weird little life hacks, it reduces the isolation and it gives the struggle meaning. It is so important to participate and share these experiences.
Yes, to speak directly to you listening right now, if you recognize these mechanisms, if you felt that crushing physical weight in the morning or that uncontrollable irritability at night, please know you are not alone.
Your lived experience is incredibly valuable data.
It really is. The highly specific, hard-won strategy you figured out for managing nighttime tension might be exactly what someone else needs to finally understand their own struggle.
Exchanging that granular knowledge is quite literally a lifeline.
I couldn't agree more. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a slightly different angle to ponder. We've spent all this time establishing that sleep acts as a fundamental daily repair shop for neural plasticity in ataxia.
It's the critical reset button.
Right. So if that's true, if sleep is that powerful of a mechanical intervention, shouldn't we start viewing the optimization of our bedroom environments as a primary vital form of physical therapy rather than just a basic lifestyle suggestion?
That completely shifts the paradigm.
And it really does. Something to think about the next time you turn out the lights.